Thank you for...
Thanks, Ray, for having me.
Thank you.
Really a pleasure.
Thank you for a wonderful H2O world so far. Are you guys having fun? It was, every time I watch Rob, his incredible clarity of how to do data science, which we just saw in the last talk, it just shines through. That's kind of roughly what we pay for, is that pay for clarity, getting clarity in the whole cluttered space of AI. So thank you for joining us, Jeff.
Oh, it's a pleasure. I'm so impressed. I mean, I don't think we've ever invested in a startup that has its own ecosystem conference. So this is incredible.
Thank you.
The fact that you have an ecosystem already, that's already a really good sign.
It's quite thrilling to have Nvidia, and more personally, people live longer than startups or companies. Jeff himself invested in the company. I'm quite really excited to have him on stage and kind of really bring to bear kind of what the core of the thinking, and some of alumni of Nvidia and employees of Nvidia are in audience and here in live stream, as well as the rest of the world. So I'm kind of cut to the chase, get to the key question: how did your journey at Nvidia get started, and how's the overall take on AI has been in the last few years?
That's a really big open question. So, couple of thoughts. Well, first, congratulations on all that you and H2O have achieved thus far. I mean, this is super impressive, and I think we were talking. You and I have already spent a lot of time together, but I think we're really just getting started. Our relationship between H2O and Nvidia is just getting started, and we think you guys are going to be incredibly important to our ecosystem. So this is going to be a fantastic relationship, and we're delighted to be investors, and congratulations on the big round. So really, we should give him a round of applause. Really,
thank you.
Really awesome job. We work with a lot of startups and a lot of CEOs, and we look for relationships that we think we can build on, people that we think we can work with, and especially given all that you've accomplished. I mean, the fact that you're so humble about it and so easy to talk to and so receptive to ideas, and you communicate so well. This is really a big deal. So I think the path to your success is already, I can see the future, and I think you're going to be super successful. So this is great.
Well, that's
so
generous.
So how did my journey get started? So I was driving in here, and I think today is December 5th, 2017. So I'm 2 days away from my 16-year anniversary with Nvidia. Hard to believe. And if you had asked me that day that I joined Nvidia whether I'd be sitting here with you talking about data science and GPUs and deep learning, I would have said you're crazy. Obviously, I knew that Nvidia's platform was going to be useful for more than gaming and graphics when I joined. In fact, it was one of the reasons when I joined. But I'd be lying if I said I envisioned, data science and AI to be kind of the killer app. And I had studied all that, AI. I think I took Lisp programming when I was at Brown, and it was just one of these things that nobody ever thought, in our lifetimes would make it. So the question is, how did we get here, and why are we talking to you? And it turns out that around 2001, and you can flip the slide. We have a couple of slides here to give you a picture. So, this slide kind of depicts the story of Nvidia. And around 2001, Nvidia was started as a consumer 3D graphics company. And we were not the only ones. There were about 50 others competing, if anybody remembers. I mean, when I first joined Nvidia, I said to the CEO, Jensen, I go, this is ridiculous. I mean, there's 50 of you guys. Why would I want to join here? And it makes total sense, though, because Nvidia was the first computer graphics company to make our products programmable. So, and the reason we made the product programmable is because people who are doing special effects for games and special lighting for simulations and architectural drawings, they wanted a wider palette of colors, textures, effects like smoke, water, fire that they could do. And the existing technology didn't allow it. So they wanted to be able to write programs, basically, to the GPU, thereby creating a programmable, massively parallel processor. Before that, they were basically fixed function, massively programmable processors. But once you could actually write a shader program, a programmable shader, you introduced the concept of programmability. Now, that's all well and good, and it was great for the gaming world, and it was great for the people that designed cars and bridges and buildings. But the byproduct was the scientists, the folks like who just came up, the professors, and especially the people at Stanford and Berkeley, they recognized that this technology would actually give them opportunity to do supercomputing tasks on their desktops. And if you think back to 2001, I mean, there were supercomputers, and today, of course, there are supercomputers, but still very expensive, very hard to get time on the supercomputers. And so these people started doing things like fluid dynamics, atmospheric simulation, weather simulation, planetary and cosmic simulations. And what they had to do is they had to take these GPUs that were basically programmed in either DirectX or OpenGL APIs. DirectX was gaming and OpenGL was the standard format for professional graphics applications. And they had to basically kludgily, figure out how to take these applications which had nothing to do with graphics and program them. And it made sense. And so we recognized this early on. And by the way, I will admit that I joined Nvidia not because I thought we were going to be a graphics company, but because I thought we were going to be a computing platform. But this was kind of the start of Nvidia becoming a computing platform.
Even then, back then, Jensen was firmly focused on making a big computing platform.
Jensen never wanted to stop at just graphics. And Jensen, for those of you who don't know him, he's a visionary. And I think the story of Nvidia clearly does not even come close, or doesn't happen without Jensen. I mean, Jensen has been the driving force, and I think that the team that surrounds him.
What was he like back then? I mean, you dropped the word crazy. People do call me crazy almost all the time. But
I wouldn't say crazy. I don't want to think my boss is crazy. No, he's not crazy. I think he's very driven. He's a visionary. He's able to kind of predict the future, and nobody can really be sure what's going to happen in the future. But he's able to paint a vision of the future and go execute toward it with relentless, tenacity. And I think all of us kind of try to do that. And the problem is, what was it said? I think it was Mike Tyson said, everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the face. Everybody said, yeah, I'm going to go beat Mike Tyson. And the first time they get punched in the face, they're like this. I do a little boxing, so this is a good analogy for me. But Jensen's the kind of guy, we've been punched in the face many times.
That chart right there is a gladiator death match, right?
Yeah.
You killed so many companies in 99, 2000, 2005.
Yeah, but if you look what happened, so from 2001 to around 2007, we start building the seeds of programmable GPUs and GPU computing. And around 2006 or 2007, we introduced CUDA, which is our GPU computing architecture. And then we decide we're going all in. We recognize, we're a gaming company, but the future is basically building a platform. We don't know that AI is going to be the killer app for the platform, but we know that we need to build the platform, and we need to go teach people how to use the platform, and the apps are going to come. And so we take all of our graphics processors, and we at that time, I would use the term, we burden it with a lot of extra functionality and a lot of extra software that allows people to do GPU computing. The problem is there's no applications for GPU computing. And for those of you who followed the graphics business or the semiconductor business, it's extremely competitive business. And the margins, the price you're able to charge at that time at least was based on the number of transistors you had on the chip. And our competitors were basically building Chevrolets, which worked perfectly fine. We were basically building Ferraris, but there was no racetrack for the Ferrari. It's kind of like the frustration. I'm sure there's people in this room that own, fast cars. I own a fast car. You really can't drive it on the roads in the Bay Area. If you do, you better have a special 1190, whatever foundation license plate and a wad of cash, because there's no place to drive it. But that was essentially the case with AI, GPUs.
And AI became the racetrack for...
Yeah. So basically, if you look at what happens, there's a financial crisis around 2008, Nvidia stock tanks, partly because of the financial crisis, but partly because the products that we were building were less competitive for gaming because we were building a platform that was more broader than gaming. But sure enough, we stick the course, and Jensen, had the tenacity, and he always knew, and the company always knew that the apps were going to come, and so people start using it for things like the first companies we invested in a company doing electromagnetic simulation up in Canada. Nobody knew how to use CUDA. So we started teaching it in the schools, and there was a little company called Excel. If you knew how to program in CUDA back in 2008, you were like a superstar, kind of like data scientists are right now. And so around 2010 or 2011, the folks at Stanford take hold of GPUs at their ImageNet competition. Basically the World Series of image recognition, and the folks that start using deep learning techniques using GPUs start getting results that are much better than the people that are basically doing computer vision algorithms. And for those of you who don't know about ImageNet, it is a contest for image recognition accuracy, and I think they do silly things like, they give you a whole library full of cats that you're supposed to, these things are cats, and then they show you another picture later, and you're supposed to correctly identify whether it's not a cat or a cat. And so, traditionally people use algorithmic techniques, just pure, programming, and well, if the cat has this color eye or this, it's probably a cat. But the deep learning techniques that were trained using GPUs, using convolutional neural networks, they let the data do the program. And they started exceeding the results of the computer vision people pretty quickly and winning the contest. And I think it was around 2014 that the convolutional neural nets that were trained using GPUs, I think it was Microsoft, that showed that they actually exceeded the human perception. So the story, and then the story, starts accelerating from there. And I think our stock price, and you never want to believe what the stock market thinks about your company, but I think in this case it's a pretty good proxy for the era of GPU computing. So that's where we find ourselves right now. We start as a computer graphics company, and now we're a GPU computing company, and we support data science, high performance computing, AI, gaming, graphics, and VR. So this is just the corollary, if you want to look at this. So while all this is happening, so we're minding our own business, and we know, we're building a platform, and we know we want to build a GPU computing platform. So it turns out, at the same time, single-threaded performance on CPUs is flatlining. Moore's law is starting to show signs of age. And whether you believe the Moore's law is over or not, that's another story. But clearly, the techniques that semiconductor companies have used and CPU companies have done are not working. Just the laws of physics have caught up with us, and so people have had to look to other techniques. And parallel programming is one of the major techniques, and obviously, software tweaking and algorithm tweaking. So that's where we find ourselves today, and we find ourselves in a very good competitive position in the industry. And so what we're doing now is, anytime you have a platform shift, the platform is useless. It's nothing without software that runs on your platform. And to get people to switch their software platform to your hardware or computing platform, you have to show some meaningful benefit to them. 2x speed up really doesn't cut it. 3x speed up. I think you need to get to kind of 5 and 10x speed ups. Yeah. And that's where we are right now. And so Nvidia is working with the entire ecosystem of software companies, particularly in AI and data science. And we're working with companies like yours to help you adapt your platforms to get speed up. And that's the H2O story. You have a beautiful ecosystem story, and one that's very complementary to Nvidia, because look at what you give away your software, basically the basic versions of your software for free, and you let people start to learn how to use it, and then you give them an opportunity to accelerate it with other techniques, whether it be deep learning techniques or GPU acceleration. So you're a great candidate for us to work with, and that's why we like you guys so much.
It's giving to get, right? So the building ecosystem is seeding a lot of raising the forest.
Yeah.
The word data is actually a Sanskrit word datum, which means to give.
Yeah.
Right? This is a very unique way of building ecosystems and investing. Actually, it's almost, in hindsight, this will be one of the most genius moves that Nvidia and you've spearheaded, is trying to build an ecosystem while investing in them and taking them to market. How did this come out?
Yeah, so, we recognized, it was probably 8 or 10 years ago, maybe longer, that, this is a new computing platform, and the bigger companies, the big entrenched companies, have a lot of software already written for the old ecosystem, for the old platform. So convincing them to switch is not necessarily that easy, and it's going to take some time. So because this is kind of a new playing field, we recognize that startups were going to play a big role in the ecosystem. So we started thinking about nurturing startups. Investing is one way to nurture them, but just educate them, give them support. So, all this culminated in our creation of what we call Nvidia Inception program, which is basically our broad-based program for deep learning, AI and data science startups. And being part of the program means that you get access to our ecosystem, you get access to tools, you get dedicated folks in Nvidia to help you with developer issues. You get to promotion as part of Nvidia's events. You get discounts on hardware. We actually have a hardware discount. And then you get the opportunity in certain circumstances to actually get equity funding from Nvidia. And, I actually think the Inception program is genius because, I have a small team and I've been funding startups. I think we have about 25 or so startups under our umbrella, but we can't fund every startup. We just don't have the bandwidth to do it or the time. So, we have two strategies. One is Inception, get everybody in the program. Anyone who wants our help and can benefit from our help, we give our help to. But the second piece is we build an ecosystem around Nvidia GPU Ventures, which is our venture arm. And we invest in companies, but even year round, we're just a smaller piece. I mean, in this case, it's actually a very significant investment. I can't tell you the actual amount, but in this case, our involvement and our participation, I believe, helps you raise money from other investors and financial investors because they understand that
we're at the scale where we can deploy.
Yeah, you're at the scale, and the investors and the ecosystem knows that by Nvidia becoming involved and taking a personal interest in it, you're able to raise a bigger pool of money. So we take all these programs together, and collectively, we use them to kind of seed the ecosystem. And I'd say right now it's going pretty well. And the thing that I'll say is there have been other companies that have tried to use money as the lever to get companies like H2O to work with them. I don't believe we're doing that at all. I believe we did not come to Sri and say, hey, Sri, if you spend more time building on the Nvidia platform, we'll give you money and we'll help you. It was actually the opposite. You came to us and we recognized collectively that we can make the world better and we could advance computing together. And we just decided to cement our partnership. But you can't force feed it. You can't force somebody to use your platform. We feel a lot of pressure actually working with you to make sure that we can deliver and we can make sure that our platform, is always going to be the best option for you to build your computing software on top of. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Those of you who've probably in the audience who've fundraised before probably know that once you've invested in together, it's like a marriage. You're in it together now. And one you cannot get out of. You really have to go and make it win, right? So it's a journey and a partnership. But more importantly, one of the unique aspects of this round, now that you've just raised the topic on it, is that it is customers. I mean, it's customer-led. Wells Fargo is a customer of H2O, started in the community. Nvidia is a partner of H2O. New York Life is a community user of H2O. So it's a community customer-led growth round for us, which is quite validating and in some sense very reinforcing. It's not just a financial transaction, it's a partnership.
Yeah.
And that's how we see it as well.
Yeah, and I'll say a couple of other things. I mean, your customer base and our customer base, there's going to be extreme overlap here. And, we believe that where you're going with this is exactly kind of the next wave of AI. And, I talked about ImageNet and image recognition a little bit. I think the first wave of AI was, voice and images, and it was all the professors from the major universities who started in that field, who then went to all the hyperscale internet companies, Bat, Fang, something, whatever, I can't remember them all. But, and they seeded into those companies, and, those companies deal a lot with images and voice, Siri, Cortana, buy this, not that. But I think the next wave of AI is data. I think this is the harder nut to crack. Perception of images, perception of voice, this is becoming a solved problem. It's not completely solved, but it's becoming a solved problem. Even self-driving cars, which Nvidia is working heavily on, involves a lot of, perception and mapping. These are also becoming solved problems. I think the problem that's not solved is most of us spend our lives not dealing with images and voice, but analyzing data and drawing insights from data. And that data is sitting inside organizations. Sometimes it's dark, you can't access it. People just don't have the bandwidth to be able to go through all the data. So organizing the data, putting it in a format that it can actually be analyzed. This is a big problem. Yep. And I think companies like H2O are starting to solve it in a very major way. And I believe you're just tip of the iceberg right now.
Using AI to do AI, right? So in many ways, it's ironic that the difficult problems, what we think are difficult problems like vision, are more solved than industrial data, because data is messy in the industries. And so.
Yeah, I mean, you have machine learning algorithms and you have deep learning algorithms. And your deep learning algorithms can be used to tune your machine learning algorithms. Exactly. But over time, what will happen is you probably won't need the machine learning algorithms anymore, the hand-tuned, hand-coded algorithms. You'll have enough experience and enough data will have gone through the platform that deep learning and convolutional neural nets. And who knows, we're still in the era of supervised deep learning. We're headed into the era of unsupervised deep learning. And so once that happens, I think who knows what the outcome. But I believe you have positioned the company extremely well. And the reason is you're solving problems right now. I mean, you're one of the few companies in the data science business that's actually can solve a problem right now. You haven't basically said, here's a bunch of tools, here's a bunch of things, go solve the problem. You've focused on particular verticals. I mean, the platform is broad, but you have some particular verticals that are deep into it. And so I think in order to sustain a company and to sustain an ecosystem, you actually have to make money so you can reinvest in the product and reinvest in the ecosystem.
Yeah, as we saw with Eddie earlier today in the talk, and healthcare is a key focus as well.
Right.
I think these are really important problems, and I think we are fortunate for us as a partnership, and the community. Community has been loving H2O since the first day we started, and community building and service to the community is kind of roughly why we come to work every day. It just reinforces our desire to do more. And the ecosystem. So this is brilliant play of ecosystem.
Yeah. So
what's the future of AI? I mean, taking it one step further. It's kind of like, I'm sure when Edison thought that light's necessary, he went and created the first city with electricity, and then everybody was excited. The first few websites with internet, right? And today we are here talking about the first few companies which are the AI, or some other few companies which are AI companies. What's ahead? I mean, is it going to be ubiquitous that we don't even look at it, or what do you see?
So I said this a couple of days ago. I think it got quoted in street.com. I think right now, everybody's putting a .ai at the end of their company. If they're your startup, hey, gosh, I can't get any money. Let's just put a .ai at the end, and the money's going to flow, and I'm going to do an ICO, and boom. And actually, it probably is working. So everybody wants to be an AI company right now. I think, first of all, I think most of those companies are not real AI companies. You know, we've become honed into and skilled into figuring that out. And generally, unless someone's doing something, I mean, there's a big confusion between machine learning and deep learning. Like both are AI. They're both forms of AI. You know, we separate. You know, anybody can say they're a machine learning company or an AI company. They just wrote, you know, billions of lines of code. You know, they had people in China and India writing billions of lines of code, and they can claim it's AI. You know, to us, you know, the real hard AI is, you know, people that are using convolutional neural networks, you know, and letting the software do the programming. So that's first of all where we are right now. But I think within 2 or 3 years, it'll be, you won't be talking about AI companies. You know, all of the frameworks, or most of them, are open source right now. You know, it's just hard for people to use them right now. So, you know, there are a lot of companies that are filling niches, you know, supporting it, servicing it. But over time, if you kind of look at even the stuff that Nvidia is involved in, they're going to be vertically focused companies. You know, they're going to be using AI as a platform or as a technology, and you know, but their business is going to be their business. The business isn't AI. The business is, you know, healthcare. The business is, like in the case of company we're involved in, Deep Instinct, using AI for malware detection. It's malware detection, or you know, it's going to be you know, voice services in cars. It's not going to be, AI is not going to be the business. I mean, at least that's the way I see the world developing.
You touched briefly about it, on how you pick companies. You kind of broached the topic briefly, whether vertical, horizontal, but what are some of the characteristics you find? And I mean, everyone has their unique Midas touch to pick companies. What is yours?
Well, maybe we should throw up. I don't know how to advance the slide. I'll throw up some of. So this is actually our portfolio. I'll leave this in the backdrop as I talk about that. But you know, how do we pick companies that we want to work with? I mean, obviously we're a GPU computing company, so any company that we work with, we want them to kind of figure out how to use GPU computing. So, you know, we're not a one-stop shop for any startup or anybody who wants our help. We'd like you to be using GPU computing. If you're not using GPU computing, let us help you figure out how to use GPU computing. If you decide that GPU computing and AI is not helpful to your business, well then, we love you guys, we love you all, but we have a lot of important work to do. You know, we probably don't need you in our Inception program, or we probably don't need to fund you. So, you know, it all comes down to kind of GPU computing. And then who do we decide to work with? Well, obviously we want all the companies, you know, doing AI and GPU computing to be in Inception, and that's a 2,000 company program. But how do we decide on the H2Os and the people that we want to really dive deeper in? Well, I think it starts, number one is, can we be helpful? You know, can we help you, and can you help us? And I think we focus more on the first, can we help you? And I think in the case of H2O and a lot of the other companies, they need our help. They want our help. And so that's number one criteria. You know, number two is who are the people involved? I mean, anybody who invests money, you know, will probably tell you the people is perhaps the most important thing. I believe for Nvidia and for the companies that we want to work with more closely, it's actually more important than for a financial investor. And I'll tell you why. It's because for us to have a relationship, you know, we need to get along. We need to have intellectual curiosity for how we can help each other. We need to be open and receptive to listening, to working together. And that's one of the reasons I was so attracted to working with H2O and why Nvidia really, because you're a great partner. You know, you know, obviously you're running a pretty big company at this point, but you know, you and I sit down. If I call you any time of day or night, you know, you and I can sit down and chat, and you ask me questions, I ask you questions. So we have a relationship with you. So that's important. You know, thirdly, you know, we want to make sure that we're strategic to each other, and that's kind of combined with the second thing I said, which can we help you and can you help us? You know, if the answers to those are yes, that means by definition we're strategic to each other.
Customers have invited both of us to the same meetings.
Yeah.
Independently, occasionally.
It's clear there's a lot of synergy between. And then the last thing I'll say is, do we think you're a great company with great prospects for commercial success? And if that's not a yes, we will help you. I mean, but we probably won't actually put our money behind it. So the fact that we actually make a financial investment in a company like H2O is just a further endorsement. And like I said before, what we found is that not only are we involved with the ecosystem of startup companies, but we also have an ecosystem of venture partners, of venture capital partners that we work with. And the beauty of the Nvidia model, which is different from a lot of other corporate venture funds. By the way, we're not a corporate venture fund. We call ourselves a GPU Ventures program. We invest off our balance sheet. But the difference between us is, financial return is not the number one priority. So we love, ecosystem development is the number one priority. So we love to work with other members of the financial community, and if they would also like to participate in the investments that we're involved in, we welcome their participation. So we're not competing with Sand Hill Road, we're actually working with Sand Hill Road. And you might say, well...
You get pulled into a lot of AI venture conferences where you're asked to pick some winners or pick some...
Sure.
I mean, you become kind of the gateway for all AI companies.
Yeah, so a lot of the venture folks like to show up. They call us all the time. And people might say, well, Jeff, that's pretty dumb. I mean, if you find a great company, don't you want to put all the money? We're about building Nvidia into the best computing platform in the world, not about, we're not a computer graphics company plus a little venture fund on the side. The little venture fund, venture thing, that's in the vast scheme of things, that's not really what's important. So building the ecosystem is important. So, if some big firm from Sand Hill Road, and by the way, it happens all the time, says, yeah, we'll come in and invest, but Nvidia, you have to take a back seat, but we're gonna, make this company great, and it's gonna be one of the next great GPU computing companies. We're like, thank you very much. We've done our job. We'll make a lot more money selling, GPUs and GPU computing platforms and all the other stuff we do than we ever will. So as the guy that's in charge of the venture fund, I think it takes a high emotional intelligence to be able to say that. And by the way, my only job at Nvidia is not running the venture fund. I run all the corporate business development. But you have to. We do this for the greater good of building the ecosystem and for Nvidia. So that and you figured this out immediately. Like we have this conversation.
We were actually working with GPUs. I mean, as you saw the video yesterday, it was really fast. So you had to start changing how you develop and build, and before we know, it was probably one single meeting where it was decided. It was nothing, it's not. And
by the way, we didn't talk about this, but if you look at this list, I don't have it grouped, but if you look kind of on the third line down, there's Graphistry, H2O, MapD. Where's Fast Data? Fast Data on the second row. We've got a couple of other, BlazingDB on the first column. All these companies, and where's Alan Kaplik from Fast Data? I saw you out here. There he is, Alan's here. We've got the MapD, the booth is right outside the door. So all the companies that we work with in data science and AI, you guys are all working together.
The Go AI.
And you guys are part of you guys formed this thing called the Go AI, GPU Open Analytics Initiative. So part of our strategy is not only are we working together, but the group of us are all working together to advance the state of the art, because like I said at the beginning, cracking the nut of data analytics using AI, this is kind of hard. And so, we needed to go figure out and help the industry kind of come up with a common data format, a common data frame. So when the data gets passed, so when data gets passed from information from H2O to MapD, so you can visualize it, it's seamless and the APIs work. So I'm really, to me, if this turns out the way I think it's going to work out, Go AI, and we've used the investment program and the partnerships to make it better, this is going to be one of the most gratifying things that we look back on in several years.
Yeah, it's a hardware-software play in many ways. And I mean, enterprise is hard. Those of you who know that from the enterprise world, it is not non-trivial. Enterprise is hard.
Yeah.
And how's Nvidia adapting to that challenge of getting into the enterprise from a classic vertical standpoint as opposed to the consumer side?
Yeah,
from the
obviously a big
gaming
change for
standpoint?
us.
Yeah.
I mean, we were a consumer company, and quite frankly, even our business model in the early days, we didn't touch the actual consumer. We worked through add-in card partners and OEMs. So typically GPUs would get sold into what we call the channel. So some add-in card vendor would take the GPU, and using our spec, I mean, we didn't just give it to them and say, go build a graphics card. We actually built the graphics card first, but we didn't want to be in that business. Or we'd sell the graphics card to the OEM. I mean, by and large, our OEM business, it used to be go buy a Dell or an HP or something and there be an Nvidia graphics. You can't even find it anymore. I mean, most of our stuff is actually sold as aftermarket, but it's a big change for us to go from that business model to actually be an enterprise computing company. So, we've hired a different group of people. We have a different mindset for it. I think it's a work in progress, but the way we do it is we don't just go in, to those companies and try to sell them the hardware platform. We work with you guys and all the other software companies to sell it as a solution. We say, okay, here's what you can do with our platform. And what's interesting is, I think a couple of years ago, it was a bit of a harder sell. Like, I remember, Todd Mostak from NAPD. I like to quote Todd. Todd has been one of the best. I mean, I think you and Todd are kind of right up there on my list of speed dial of people who I can talk to about anything. And Todd told me 2 years ago, Todd and MapD is basically building a GPU accelerated database and visualization tool. They're doing quite well. And he told me a couple of years ago, he said, Jeff, and by the way, he wrote a great article, like, I think he called it The Age of GPUs. I mean, this is a great article that he wrote like 2 years ago, but he used to go into his customers and they go, wow, this sounds really good, a database that's like hundreds of times faster than a typical database, and I can do real-time visualization, but why would I buy a GPU? I don't need a GPU for anything. So he was selling GPUs. That's 2 years ago. Today, now that kind of the deep learning big bang has happened, most data centers, most customers are recognizing they have to have GPUs. Some of them may not know exactly what they're going to do with it, but it's no longer a really hard sell to say that you need. So now we bring all the applications behind it, and you guys are going to all benefit.
One of the unique aspects I found with working with Nvidia is it's a very fast-moving company. It helps that you have the fearless leader. Time Business Person of the Year, and Harvard
Fortune.
Yeah, Fortune, and I think was it Harvard Business School that it ranked him one of the top CEOs of the world. Mm-hmm. You have such a fearless leader, Jensen, but it must be quite an amazing time. It's all to be at Nvidia right now in the forefront of pushing AI on the hardware software.
Yeah, so we're about 12,000 people now. I think we were about 1,000. It still feels like we're a startup. I feel like one of our advantages is we can move quickly and we can make decisions quickly. And I think that starts at the top. I mean, I think the accolades that Jensen has received, if anything, he's undervalued. It may seem weird to say that, but I don't think I feel like he's even under-recognized by the industry. And I think give us a few more years here, we're not going away. We're in this for the long term. And, Jensen's started the company. He's been there from the beginning. A lot of his core management team has been there for, 15, 20 plus years. So it's a very tight-knit group. And I think we're not a layering company when it comes to making decisions. I mean, you can see how quickly we can move to work with you. And, we analyze things, but, a lot of it is, we trust our instincts and we try to do what's right and for not only for the industry, but for the people that work for the company. So it's an exciting time. And, I joke about it because, we've been talking about this for a long time. I've been talking about GPU computing for years, and I think it was probably about 5 or 6 years ago during the darkest days. There was a point, when the gaming business was kind of flatlined, but the GPU computing business really hadn't taken off, and these were some dark days. I mean, a lot of my former colleagues no longer are at the company because they gave up. They didn't see the vision, and people looked at me and they said, well, "You're crazy. You don't know what you're doing. Intel's going to rule the world forever. Qualcomm's going to rule
the right kind of crazy."
What the right? I guess the right kind of crazy, but you just have a deep-seated belief in what you're doing, and sometimes you don't. The thing you do is you chase what's right. You chase the dream. You don't worry about the immediate gratification, and I think this is when I look back at kind of how Silicon Valley works and some of the great success stories of Silicon Valley, there are very few people that just immediately achieve success. And I think when they do, it actually can turn out badly.
You and I like Andre Agassi quite a bit, and he's doing a lot of foundation work. I think his quote is reminiscent, which says...
Who's this?
Andre Agassi.
Okay. Oh, Andre Agassi. Of course.
The tennis player.
Of course, yeah.
And he had an interesting quote, which is the best things in life are on the other side of tired. Right?
On the other side of?
Tired.
Oh, right.
Like really tired, and so then the good things are just getting started.
Yeah, I told you I got the opportunity to meet Andre Agassi, and I read his book, and I think he's an impressive guy. And the things that impressed me about him were, not only is he speaks the truth, first of all. He wrote...
His book is incredible.
His book is incredible. I mean, if you haven't read his book, he talks about everything that was going on, and it's amazing that he was able to win all those championships. And I'm a tennis fan and a tennis player, but the thing is, he's a great person. Like, not only is he's using his influence and fame to kind of do good with the world. He's funding all of these charter schools, and he got up in front of a room of athletes. It was pretty incredible, actually. It was the first time in my life that I felt really intimidated. I'm sitting, Steph Curry sitting over there, and Joe Montana sitting over there, and a bunch of athletes, and then a bunch of VCs and people like me. And he gave the keynote, and he got up. He goes, "Look, we're all sitting in this room. We have influence over the world. Whether you agree with what's going on in Washington or not, let's forget about that. Let's just try to make a difference. Let's start by being kind and nice to people and doing our business in a way that, with an air of class and dignity and giving back to the community." So, he's on my top list of people that I admire. So.
Yeah, it helps that he has an incredible wife behind him.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be able to do this without the incredible partner I have in my life as well. So I'm sure.
But that would be
thank your families for being
absolutely.
the true co-founders.
But that would be my advice to H2. I think you're going to be incredibly successful on this journey. Do it with class. Bring goodness to the world at the same time. And I'm proud to be associated, and Nvidia is proud to be associated with you and H2O, so I think we're going to do great things.
Likewise, we're just getting started, and it's been an incredible teamwork. Almost everybody in the company and the community which touched us, the partners, the customers, and the earliest users, some of you are in the audience. It's really, it all got started here, right? And still very early days, so really early days. We look to companies like yourself, which were built an amazing developer ecosystem. CUDA was much like on the edge for a long time, and now it's at the center of computing.
CUDA is the key that unlocked where Nvidia is today. Without CUDA, I don't believe you have the GPU computing platform. You don't have the AI platform. It was only because we created the tools and the framework that allowed people to develop on top of it. And there are other companies now that are trying to build AI ecosystems and processors, but they don't have CUDA.
Yep.
I think CUDA is going to be a big advantage for us.
One of the things H2O for GPU, the open source project we have done, is it connects the R community. R is CUDA for data scientists in many ways. Right? So R communities are to CUDA, and we need to have more corners, CUDA corners, to be able to convert some of the core algorithms that haven't been converted yet into GPUs to get the speed ups, and just improve the overall. But the notion that CUDA can build a company like that is the fact that the power is at the tips of the makers, the engineers, the developers, the data scientists. So we are here because of the data science.
And by the way, it took us a long time to get CUDA adoption, but we started teaching it in the schools. We started writing textbooks. We had our friends and professors write textbooks because people didn't know how to do parallel programming. But you know, you have to do all that groundwork. I mean, we work with all the major universities and now all the software developers, and we help. You know, just like we help the gaming companies. You know, we didn't just throw out our graphics processor and tell all the game developers to go use it. We actually sat with them, and we still sit with them, and we help them tune the games to make, and we let them know what's coming next year so they can tune the game to optimize for the best possible experience. The same is true with all of the software applications, whether they be AI or self-driving car or deep learning or data science and H2O.
Probably have time for one question, I would imagine. What would you say to a future entrepreneur, young Jeff Herbst in the audience?
Yeah.
What would you say, or what piece of advice?
You know, so I have had a startup, but you know, I wouldn't say that I don't consider myself the real entrepreneur. I'm more of a enabler of an ecosystem of entrepreneurs. To me, that's the role that I fill. You know, I have started companies before, but to me, my role is helping. You know, being an enabler. But I would say my biggest piece of advice is, you know, go with your passion. You know, go find something to do that, you know, you're passionate about and that you believe in. You know, and then don't let anybody convince you otherwise. Because if you're having fun and you like what you're doing, it's good. And then do it with high class. You know, my mantra in the Valley has always been, you know, I'm a long-term player here. You know, I'm not going to let one deal or one interaction or one relationship, you know, I'm not going to get crazy on that because I'm going to be here for a long time. And, you know, I've always kind of conducted my business in a way that I would like to do repeat business. And so I'm always fair. You know, I'm always, you know, I'd like to think so. I mean, what?
Do it with class.
I'd like to think so. I mean, it's not like I don't get upset or angry, but I always try to think about, you know, doing the right thing and being open and honest and direct. And I just feel like that's a better way to conduct business. And, you're not constantly wrapping yourself in your own string. You know, you're straight up. And if people are not straight up with you, then you move on and you deal with other people. So those are the kind of relationships I've tried to build and the kind of companies that I've tried to work with.
Following your passion and staying authentic, that's all.
I guess that's a more elegant way of saying what took me 2 minutes to say, yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much, Jeff, and on behalf of the entire H2 world, thank you so much for your presentation.
Thanks, sir.
Very exciting.